I wanted to do this because with the start of the new ministry, Nancy Hicks Live, which we just launched in January, I've got some team members here. With the start of that, I was advised that I should stop blogging and start vlogging. So I stopped blogging, which I had been doing for a little while. I'd been doing it with QVC for a while, and then I had gone into it with ministry and Free Fridays. But I started vlogging. So do you guys know what that means, vlogging? Video logs. Kind of 3 minutes or fewer they typically should be, and just conversation starters, okay? So I started vlogging, and the fact is that throughout the month of January, there was a particular theme that I wanted to address. And with the new ministry came a lot of new for me, and so it sort of evolved out of this. But there was a new ministry, there was a new team. One of my new team members had a new baby. She's sitting over there. New office, still in construction, still under construction right now. New chapter in my life, a whole new portion to my story, you know, into what God is doing. So there was a lot of new. So this was kind of bubbling up in me. So as I was thinking about new, I was also spending time with God before Christmas and making sure that I was sort of settled in to Him. Obviously, if I can see something on the horizon, doesn't matter any time of my life, but especially when God's doing something, you're like, oh, something's coming. I was really making sure that I was spending plenty of time with God. So one of the books that I was using, an old book, you guys probably don't know about this book, but Max Lucado, some of you may know of this author, pastor, and he's got a book called God Came Near. It's old. But I was looking through that, and there was one phrase that he used in there that just stood out to me in such a big way, and it's really what precipitated this whole January thing. And that is, you are what you see. Okay, so he writes this, you are what you see. And that got me thinking, I had to think that through. Do I believe it? Has he convinced me? And I read further. But I thought, my gosh, that really is true. You are what you see. Now, let me just say why I think that that's true. But what happened was that phrase precipitated this idea, because it's not enough for me to go, oh, this is what God's doing in me. What becomes really big for me is you. What God is doing in you and in other people, especially women, it seems, that God's given me women right now. So I was thinking, with the new year coming, 2016, it's a new view, it's a new you, and that's what was driven. That's what I called that, my vlogging over the month of January. New view, new you. If it's true that you are what you see. You see that? And so as I thought about it, I thought, okay, if I think about our lives, like think about just being a mom. Right? You think about your children. You plan for them, you take care of them, you're with them a lot, right? And then they go off and they have their little lives elsewhere, and what do? You find volunteer opportunities where they are. And you do this. And so you're around them, and then what happens is you sort of become what? Danny's mom. Right? You get this identity, this label that becomes, David's mom. And so what happens is you're keeping your eye on those little ones, which of course I would in no way say you shouldn't. But sometimes we can keep our eyes on something, this view, and it becomes so much that we actually kind of get folded in. Do you know what I mean? We can get kind of folded into them. Here's another example. Think of athletes. With athletes, and I can think of a few different kinds of athletes, I've seen some athletes have chiseled bodies, look like machines, up on their refrigerators or their cupboards in their kitchens. And it's sort of like that's the goal. The goal is to be chiseled. The goal is to look like that for some reason, but sometimes that seems that's the goal. Runners, marathon runners, my husband Cam's a marathon runner. And so I know that the goal, that 26.2 miles that he's going to run, that's the goal, but the goal is the time. What's my time? What am I keeping my eye on? And so they do all kinds of things with the scale, getting on the scale and keeping track of all kinds of things that they're eating, etc. And I know when you think about hikers, another athlete, they set the summit as their goal, right? And so when they're climbing up the hills, if they can keep the summit in view, it gives them this excitement, this adrenaline, and it kind of gets them going. So this idea of you are what you see and getting kind of folded into that, he convinced me. And as I thought it through, I thought, yeah, I can see how that's true. Now, that's why I wanted to have this talk, New View, New You. What does it mean for all of us going through 2016? What does it look like for Megan? What does it look like for Sasha? What does it look like for us to have a new view as we move forward in this new year? Because we want to be all that God has created us to be, right? We really do. Here's the thing about new. New and change are inextricably linked. New and change kind of go hand in hand. A lot of people don't, really do love new. A lot of people love new. And I know I'm one of those people. I love to go to new destinations, new places to travel, for example. Like, it's a big world. I think, why would I go back to the same place? I've already been there. However, a lot of people absolutely want to go back to the same places. Lake George. You want to go back to those same places. There's something familiar and comfortable, and there's something to be said about that. It might not be that I just don't prefer new, but for a lot of people, it's definitely about new. And the thing about change is that most people don't like change. Change is hard. Cheryl, you just moved here. Change is hard. And most people resist change. Here, this is kind of an interesting thing. Jim Early, so Jim Early is a professional and personal guru and a consultant, okay? He says that when forced to embrace change, okay, this is pretty recent, 10% of the people behave like James Bond, they go for it. 10% of the people throw all caution to the wind and they just kind of like be kind of foolish about it, like whatever. Listen to this. 80% of the people resist it and do nothing. 80% of the people resist change and do nothing. That scared me. When I saw that, I thought, that high? I understand being afraid of change. And the thing about new and change, you guys, is that new precedes and follows change. Okay, new precedes and follows change. Kind of like bookends, right? Can you picture that? So it's new ideas, it's new view, it's new perceptions, it's new all sorts of things that puts you into this change, this state of change, which is unsettling. It's unsettling. It happens when kids come along. It happens when you get married. It happens when you move. It happens when you put your career aside and you say, I'm going to stay at home with these children. So it new precipitates change. And change is uncomfortable. It's unsettling. It's a transition period. It can be very difficult. And then you're in new again, right? So it's like those bookends. Okay, so with that, I want us to just recognize a couple of things. So you have to sort of understand, because I think it's important to understand where you are. Are you the kind of person, I want you to think with me, okay? If you're writing down, great, but at least think with me. Am I the kind of person that resists change? Am I in that 80% that goes, mm-mm? Or am I the James Bond type, or am I the kind that just goes, whatever, I'll just go for it, doesn't matter. But are you in that bulk of people, 80% of the people do nothing and resist change and resist new? To some extent, okay? Are you? Because it's important to understand where you are before you can really appreciate where you're going. You got to know where you are. All right, so that's one thing that we want to think about. Two other things I want us to recognize in our very short time together. Obviously, by the way, I'm going to do more sort of raising questions than I am solving things, right? I get that. So just, we just need to know that as we go forward. Two things I want us to recognize. Number one is the view. You need to recognize as we move forward in 2016, what are you setting your sights on? What is your current view? You can think of it as target, you can think of it as goal, you can think of it however you want. But here's one of my favorite authors and psychologist, Dr. Larry Crabb. You hear me mention him a lot. He says this, and I love it. Vision has more power to release the soul than insight has to change the soul. Okay, now listen to that again. Vision, so looking ahead in your life, 2016, vision has more power to release the soul than insight looking back. Though looking back is important, right? Looking back is important. We look at our parents, we look at our situation, we look at things that happen to us, but you want to look back to inform, but you don't want to build your house there, right? Because vision actually has more power to release your soul to be all God created you to be, Megan. To be all God created you to be. So that, I think, is really, really critical. And so, of course, what you want to do is identify your view. Identify your view. And so here's my question to you. What excites you? I really want you to think about this. What is your passion? What are you passionate about? Maybe it's not just one thing. And actually, I would say avoid thinking of like one target. I think there's a bandwidth of things. I think there's a bandwidth, okay? So if you think I have to hit that one thing that God has designed, I think not. I think sort of, but is there something that excites you right now in your life? Don't worry about 10 years down the road. I'm talking this year. Is there something that brings you alive? Is there something that excites you? Is there something you're good at? And I want you to think about that you think, okay, that could be for me a view, a target, a goal, whatever you want to call it. Because that is what's going to open up. You are, right, what you see. And I think it's the same way when Larry Crabb says vision has more power. I think they mean basically the same thing. You become, right? Releasing the soul means becoming who God has created you to be. Okay, so vision. Now, I think the other thing we need to recognize with vision is that it can be tough. And it's tough for a couple of reasons. One is because some of you in the room, some of you like a lot of things. You're excited about all kinds of things, right? Some of you are smiling like, yeah, that's me. And so here's what I want to say about that. That's me as well. I get that. And it can be confusing sometimes. I would say this. If you're the kind of person who likes a lot of different things, look for the themes. Look for common themes. I'll give you an example from my own life. In my life, I was a singer for a lot of years, a long time. I was a singer, and I was teaching, and I was speaking television now for 10 years, speaking in television. And all these things are themes. The theme is I'm a communicator. It took me a lot of years to figure that out. So I'm giving you something that I want you to get a little earlier than I got it. All right? So are there common themes when it comes to things that you kind of go, yeah, those are my strengths. I'm passionate about that. The other reason it can be a little bit tough, you guys, is because you've never really had the permission or thought that you could think about it. Sometimes, and some of you are in that stage where you've got children around you, sometimes you can't think past the constraints. Do you get that? Sometimes you've never given yourself permission to think, what is it that I want or like? It's everybody else. And then one day you'll get bitter about that. But you need to think about, what is it that I like? But you haven't necessarily given yourself permission. I want to give you permission. What is it that you enjoy? What excites you? And to be able to, at least for this, looking at the view, to think past the constraints. Okay, that's something I want you to be able to do. Now, the other reality is, and we have to talk about this, the fear factor. Okay, that's another thing that we want to recognize. Again, when we're looking forward in this next year, new view, new you, we are what we see. We have to recognize the fear factor. And I was talking to Julie Wood about this. And I was sharing my heart with her. She said, Nancy, you need to tell the women of Free Fridays. You need to tell the women, because they don't, I'm sure so many people wouldn't believe this about you. We need to talk about, there are various obstacles, okay? There's no question when it comes to sort of seeing the view and moving towards something that you believe for this season in my life that I really feel that God is moving me towards. There are obstacles, and fear is definitely one of those obstacles. Now, fear can cripple us, right? We know this. We know this. It can put a ton of pressure on us. It can cause us to deny that we have fear, and so we sort of stay put, right? We choose to stay put. And what else we do is we tend to blame people. Well, if I'd had a more supportive husband, right? And we tend to point the fingers. If my parents had been a little more encouraging, if I hadn't had to move all the time, I would blank. Are you following me? Okay. The other thing that we can do is put that on our kids. Well, if I didn't have these, really, do you want to do that? Do you really want to blame the people in your life? Do you really want to blame your children for not being the woman who God has called you to be? Do you want to do that and put that on them? Now, there are realities, right? There are constraints. But I want us just for now to think about some of these things just around fear, because guess what? You are all grown up now. You got to put your big girl pants on, and you got to be who God has called you to be, no matter where he has placed you, no matter what the conditions, no matter the constraints. There are always ways and opportunities that you can be who God has called you to be. The Apostle Paul was in a prison and wrote a lot of the New Testament from that vantage point. Okay? So we could say, oh, I've got kids. Oh, I've got... No, no, no. It's time to choose. It's time to choose. You're all grown up now. Now, the other reality about fear is, and I think we need to get honest, right? And so that, I think, if we can sort of put our finger on, yeah, I am kind of shifting blame, I am doing this, I think getting honest and pulling it out of the darkness and into the light, which we talk a lot about, is critical. It begins to lose its power when we bring it out of the darkness and into the light. So I think just flat out saying, yeah, actually, I am afraid. Actually, I have been blaming other people. I am petrified of moving forward. Guess what? You're in great company. You are in great company. And I want to tell you this. I don't know anyone who's ever done anything that I go, wow, who isn't afraid. You guys need to hear this. I know senior executives who are afraid. I know celebrities. I know performers. I know PhDs. They're all afraid. They're all afraid. I told my sister once, I said, you know, Deb, she said, oh, well, you have no fears. I said, are you crazy? Every time I get up to do any of the things that God's called me to, I'm standing in the wings going, I can't believe I have to do this. What if I trip? What if I forget my words? What if I... Of course that's in there. The question is, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? Do I choose to let it cripple me and pull me down, or do I choose to move forward? And so I was thinking, you guys, about, you know that scene in The Sound of Music? You guys have all seen The Sound of Music? You know that scene where Maria is leaving the convent? Can you picture it? She's leaving the convent. Okay, I'm going to sing. She's leaving the convent, and she's leaving what is familiar, what she knows, and she steps out and she sings, what will this day be like? I wonder, what will my future be? Little minor key in there showing her timidity. I wonder. It could be so exciting to be out in the world, to be free. My heart should be wildly rejoicing. Then she pulls back. What's the matter with me? Right? And then she moves forward. I've always longed for adventure, to do the things I never dared. Now here I'm facing adventure. Then she pulls back again. Then why am I so scared? And everyone I know has the same thing going on. Boldness, timidity. Boldness, timidity. And it's going on in us while we're in the middle of it, while we're standing in the wings, while there's something you're on the cusp of. You just need to know it's going to come. And don't let it cripple you or hold you back. Don't let it cripple you or hold you back. I have to tell you the true confession. So I said, you know, I absolutely have this going on. And I will tell you that with the launch of this new ministry, I've had that. And my team has seen me crying and praying and picking me up and saying, I'm going to do that, Nancy. I've got that. And so I feel it, right? I feel it. And there's one quote that I've loved from the co-founder of the Salvation Army, Catherine Booth. She says, I know not what he's going to do with me, but I have given myself entirely into his hands. And she's talking about God. She's talking about God. And some days, you guys, I say that with such boldness. I know not what he's going to do with me. And I say it with joy and fervor. And I know not what he's going to do with me, but I've given myself entirely into his hands. And there are days that I say it because it just needs to be stated. I just need to put it out there and remind myself, you know, we all of us have the fear thing going on. Now, speaking of God, because if you can have a Jen view, a Sasha view, You can have a clearer view. If you can begin to get a picture of what excites you, what you're passionate about, you can identify your fear. If you can do those two things, good, but it's only going to take you so far. It's only going to take you so far. There is only so much that you have in you that is going to take you where not just you, but where God has in store for you to go. And so we need to talk about God. We all need a higher view. Okay, here's our view, but we need a higher view going forward into this next year and forever. But let's just talk about this next year. I want to tell you a story. My son, David, so I'm going to tell you two stories today. My first son, David, older one, when he was about 2, all right? He was really, short, obviously, he was 2. And it was really confusing for the little guy because we were in Canada and we were at the Salvation Army Church. And I wore the Salvation Army uniform. You guys have seen me with that on. And I had black skirt, charcoal nylons, and black shoes. Okay, that's just the bottom part, black jacket as well. But that's for the women. And so there were a lot of women kind of standing around one day, and David's just little guy. And we were standing in kind of a huddle, maybe it was after the service, and David wandered over accidentally and was latching on to another woman's knees. He was hanging on like very affectionately to her knees. And I'm looking at my child over there, and other people were noticing, and I was kind of feeling for David because I thought, oh, he thinks that's me. And I was protective of him, so I just gently said, David, David. But to the poor kid, it was just a sea of knees, charcoal nylons, black skirts, and these black shoes. It was like, could be any one of these people could be my mother. So anyway, David, he looked over, the penny dropped. He's like, if that's my mother, whose knees are these? So I kind of scooped him up and picked him up where he could see the faces of the people, not just the knees, and everything kind of looked the same. And I think in many ways that's like us. I think there's a part of us that says, pick me up, Mommy. Pick me up, Daddy. I can't see from down here. And we need a God view. We need a shift in perspective, right? And so some of you are thinking, I have a worldview, a perspective that very much includes God, right? I am absolutely keeping my eye on God, and sometimes we forget. And then there are others of you that are thinking, now why on earth, why would I adopt a God view? Why would I do that? And so I just want to, for those of you who already are there and who forget at times, I want to remind you, and for those of you who aren't there or going, why would I want to do that? I want to just tell you just a couple of things about God. Number one, God made you. Okay, here's why you want his view for your life this next year and forever after. He made you. He created you. Acts 1 says, in him we live and move and have our being. Karen, in him you live and move and have your being. He gave you the breath you have. He gave you the breath you have. He loaned it to you, and there will be a day where he withdraws his breath from you, and your days here will be done. And you don't have control over that, but he does. He made you. He made you. He knows what you need. He knows that you don't put coffee in the tank of a car. You were made to accommodate certain things. He made you that way. He knows that. Okay? Number 2, the second reason why you can trust his perspective, why you want the God view. Number 2 is he knows you. He knows you. Some of you are like, he knows me. No, really, he knows you. He knows your hurts. He knows your name, all of your names, your married name, your maiden name. He knows you. He knows your longings. He knows your desires. If you can't figure out what you want to do this next year that would bring life to you, he already knows what that is. He already knows. He knows you. He knows that you see weak. And he looks at you and declares strong. In me, strong. He knows that you see faithless. And he looks and knows, I am faithful and have enough for you. He knows that you feel like you see dying dreams. And he looks at you and he says, I have bigger dreams for you. I have bigger dreams for you, Pat. To me, that is astonishing. He knows you. Number 3, The third thing and final thing, but nowhere close to exhausting, please. Nowhere close to exhausting all of the reasons why you would want to adopt a God view. No eye has seen, he says. No ear has heard. No mind can conceive what God has in store for those who love him. That's what the Bible says. He knows what will make you soar. So I am not in any way exhausting why I want you to trust a God view, though I want you to have your view to it will sort of expand and explode with his, getting folded into his, yes? Okay, and so the final reason, and this is the one that's most tender to me, is that he loves you. He loves you. When was the first time you heard that God loved you and it meant something to you? And it meant something to you. He loves you. He looks at you with eyes of love and a heart of compassion. I want to tell you one final story that illustrates this, that God loves you and is for you. 5 years ago, my son, the younger son, so I told you a story about my older one, my younger son, Aaron, he was turning 16. And we had said to him, Cam and I had said to him, so what do you want to do for your 16th birthday? And he was like, I think I want to go to see Switchfoot. Now, do you guys know Switchfoot? It's a band. And it's a band that has been so much a part of our lives for so many years. It's an amazing band. I love Switchfoot. And their key leader, John Foreman. My boy, so our basement is a studio. Tons of instruments, lots of recording stuff, and our boys have always loved Switchfoot. Aaron knows all the Switchfoot songs, he knows the keys, he knows it all. So we took about 8 friends of his to see Switchfoot down in the city in Philadelphia at the Electric Factory. So we're in this venue, and we have 8 of these kids, 16-year-olds down there. And they're all on the main floor. You guys been down there before? They're all on the main floor standing. There are 2 warm-up bands, and then Switchfoot's going to play for probably 2 hours, right? So all these kids, among hundreds of other kids, are all down on the main floor. And Cam and I, because I had a bad back at the time, we had to sit up in the balcony. That's where the seats were. So I'm up in the balcony. We were right at the front row, though. So here was the bar, and we could see everything. It was fabulous. Now, here's what you need to know about Aaron. Not only does he love Switchfoot and love the music of Switchfoot, but it's also a way that Aaron has used over his whole life. We've always struggled to get Aaron to kind of come out and be honest about his feelings. He's struggled. He keeps things really buried, you know. He's one of those kids that just keeps it all down here. And so for many, many years, I would sit with him after, I remember 7th grade, every single day after school, you guys. I'd pick him up, bring him home, and we'd sit and have cookies and milk or something, and I would just see tears rolling. He had a hard year that year. And I would just sit and say, I'm right here, Aaron. I love you, and I'm here to listen. If you have anything you want to share, anything at all, I'm here to listen, because I love you. So this was kind of always a struggle with Aaron, you guys, just kind of getting him to kind of come alive, to kind of come out. And, you know, he studied classical piano, and there was a time when he wanted to study drums. We were like, yeah, play the drums, go crazy, let it all out, get it out, you know. So here we are now, that's Aaron, you need to understand that about him. So here we are now on his 16th birthday at the Electric Factory. He made a sign. He made a sign that said, it's my 16th birthday, can I play Stars with you? Stars is one of their songs. Okay, have you guys ever done that where you make a sign, you go to a concert and you hold up a sign hoping they'll call you up on stage? I'd never heard of such a thing. I had never, and I thought that's bold, and I don't think it's going to happen, but you know, whatever. So he makes this sign, it's my 16th birthday, can I play Stars with you? And so when Switchfoot comes out after the 2 warm-up bands, he's holding it, not right away did he hold it up, but he was holding this sign up. Now, for the second song that they sang, you guys, was Stars. And so I felt badly. I thought, shoot, there's no chance now that he's going to get up there and he's going to be able to play. I mean, there's really no chance now. I didn't think there was a chance before, but there's really no chance now. So he's holding this thing up, even though Stars had already come and gone. The concert goes on. We're enjoying it because we love Switchfoot. And he's holding this sign up, and we couldn't even see him anymore because there were just so many kids. It was awesome. All of a sudden, no kidding, you can get it on YouTube. all of a sudden, we see our 16-year-old being yanked up onto the stage by John Foreman. He calls him out of the crowd, and he pulls him up on the stage. Okay. I'm looking, going, is that my kid? I'm in the balcony. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm watching Aaron. And he gets up, and John Foreman takes his guitar off of his neck and puts it on Aaron. True story. You can get it on YouTube. Here's the song. Okay, he gives it to him, and I'm just like, and here's the song that he played, Awakening. Do you think that was it was a better song for Aaron? It was just a fabulous song, Awakening. He starts to play, and but here's the thing, it was unbelievable. I was dying. But here's what's even more amazing to me. As soon as Aaron got up on the stage, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, wow. I see my husband, Cam, who's a suit. Right? He's conservative. He's a suit. You're laughing. It's true. Some of you know him. Here's what happens up in the balcony. He lunges forward, you guys. He lunges forward. I thought I was going to fall. He stands up. He lunges forward, and he begins to scream from the balcony. Aaron! He is yelling. I don't want to wreck my voice. He's yelling, Aaron! Aaron, go, baby, go! He is yelling it so loud. And in fact, my first initial response to that was, oh my gosh, Cam, sit down. Oh my gosh, you're embarrassing. That was like the first split second. And as soon as I was able to move through that stupid feeling and thought, I looked at Cam and his passion for his kid and cheering his kid on, go, baby, go. And I am telling you guys, I had a holy moment at the electric factory. I had a holy moment where I was looking, and I am not kidding. I was watching Cam, watching his son, and I immediately thought, God, that's exactly what you're like with us. That's exactly what you're like with us. Go, baby, go, go, baby. You guys, it was unbelievable, and I'm telling you, if you put Switchfoot, Aaron Hicks plays with Switchfoot, Awakening, you can see that video still today. I love it. He was 16, and I'm telling you, I have not seen my husband come so alive, and I've not seen my 16-year-old son at the time, who's a man now, come so alive on the stage doing what he was built to do, even if it becomes a career for him. I don't care. But are you doing something that brings you life? And that moment, that child was doing something that brought him great life. And it was a picture to watch Father loving and cheering on, and so for the son, the child. It was a moment. Why should you adopt a God view? For 2016, forget about the year after, you guys, for those of you who are here and anybody else who hears this video. Because his view, his perspective, is very much unlike yours. And the scriptures say, Hebrews 12:2 says, we fix our eyes on Jesus, who began and will finish your journey and your faith. The author and perfecter. Fix your eyes on Jesus. His ways are not your ways. His view is different than what you can see. You can perceive so much, right? You can move and muster through some of that fear only so far. But I am telling you, that plus the God who made you, who knows you, Angela, and who loves you and cheers you on, Cheryl. That's the God who says, I know the way. I know what I have in store for you this next year. And all he asks you to do is follow him. Follow him.